company in the world. On the other hand, now that's not all good though. On the other hand, then a lot of super talented people would have stayed, and because PayPal got acquired by eBay not long after, so there was like the PayPal coup at the end of 2000. 18 months later, it was acquired by eBay. So, and then, but, if you think of the companies that came out of PayPal, the so-called PayPal mafia, YouTube, there was Steve and Chad created YouTube, Jerry Saltman created Yelp, Peter created Palantir and a bunch of other things. There's David Sachs created this company, and Reid Hoffman created LinkedIn.
Wow. It's almost like all that market cap still exists, but now it's allocated on all these other tech companies instead of X.com.
Yeah, so in retrospect, I don't know, sometimes it's maybe a good thing that X wasn't, or PayPal didn't achieve those things, because all these other companies would have at least been delayed, or may not have existed.
There's definitely been kind of a resurgence in interest as we get into kind of cryptographic, money and Bitcoin and all that, of interest in this idea, and it's interesting, software hasn't eaten the banking industry yet. Software's eaten a lot of industries. There's some that it just hasn't, and banking's still there,
Stripe's eating them slowly, but they're doing a pretty good job. The banks are in trouble if it's not Stripe, it'll be somebody else.
And you love code, but you don't seem to be as bullish on Bitcoin. Do you have could you break down why? Because you're talking about this big database that's more secure for faster transactions. It seems like Bitcoin's hitting at least some of those.
I'm neither here nor there on Bitcoin. Yeah.
What did you think when you read Satoshi's white paper for the first time? Were you like, oh, it's pretty interesting? Or
that was pretty clever. It's just the things. Yeah. This always gets the crypto people angry, but there are transactions that are not within the bounds of the law, and there are obviously many laws in different countries, and normally cash is used for these transactions, but in order for illegal transactions to occur, the cash must also be used for legal transactions. You need an illegal to legal bridge. That's where crypto comes in.
So is it kind of the dark net stuff?
It can't be entirely dark, because otherwise how do you buy normal stuff? And cash these days is used just much rarer. It's hard. It's increasingly difficult to use cash. Some places you can't use cash at all.
Yeah.
So there's a forcing function for transactions that are illegal, quasi-legal, and in some cases legal. But it's got to have some. It's got to be both legal and illegal. It doesn't count otherwise. Otherwise, you simply it can't just be transactions within an illegal economy. Because how do you buy food in a house or something? You must have a legal to illegal bridge. So where I see crypto as is effectively as a replacement for cash, but not as a replacement as a primary. Not as I do not see crypto being the primary database. So now this is sometimes taken being I'm being judgmental about crypto, and it's actually, I think there's a lot of things that are illegal that shouldn't be illegal. But so it's not as though I think that sometimes governments just have too many laws about that. They shouldn't have so many things that are illegal.
Didn't you say on Mars there'd be less laws?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Do you still propose a direct democracy on Mars?
I think probably that's the best. Probably it's the best thing.
Mars technocracy.
The Mars technocracy.
Yes.
And you want to make laws super short and simple, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, like if people can't understand laws, then then what's usually going to happen is some special interest is going to bamboozle the public with long laws.
Yep.
And then the laws, like reading this law is like the size of Lord of the Rings, but a very boring version of it.
Like the dealership thing is just crazy to me. You know, like America's supposed to be competitive, free market. It's weird, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, just so you want to keep the laws short and give them some kind of sunset period so that they don't just stay there forever. Otherwise, just accumulate over time and just eventually it'll be unwieldy. So the laws should have some time frame associated with them. They automatically go away. I mean, it's just keep the laws short to avoid trickery and sort of special interests that ultimately does not benefit the public. And then I think direct democracy is less susceptible to corruption than representative democracy. So, corruption just being like, to what degree is this action being taken that do not serve the interests of the population? Do not result in a net increase in population happiness as a whole. So that's why I think probably direct is better. And then just have things in real time. So if you want to vote on something, you can vote on it real fast. Probably I would say make it easier to get rid of laws than to put them in, because these things tend to have a lot of inertia, and so have a bias towards having laws go away and not be there. So like maybe it takes 60% to put a law in place, but 40% to remove it, or something like that. Yeah. I mean, let's try it. See what happens.
The bills are extremely long that they pass. No one reads them.
Yeah.
Hardly anyone in Congress has read the bill, and even if they've read the bill, if you quiz them on the details, they wouldn't know it.
They'll find their page. They're like,
yeah, there's like, tell me what's, this, there was no idea.
It seems kind of alarming that that's like the status quo and everyone just accepts it, but...
Yeah, these laws tend to be written by industry groups as well. So they'll write the law and then interact with the congressional staff but most of the work will be done by the industry groups, and so they're going to write laws that entrench their position.
It's like the people or the players behind the ref, like you were saying earlier.
Exactly.
It's that exact.
Right, so you get the regulatory capture of yeah. The players shouldn't be paying the ref salary type of thing. Well, the ref shouldn't be thinking, I'm going to retire and get paid by the players. So it's kind of amazing that it works as well as it does, given all these issues. So then PayPal, I ended up getting malaria in 2001. 2001.
Yeah, tell us about this, the malaria thing.
That was you went on vacation, right?
Yeah, we went to South Africa with Kimball, actually.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then came back and had like a near-death case of malaria.
Yeah, grew up in South Africa. We'd go to the bushveld all the time, to the what you guys call safari, and you just had a house in the bush. So you just go there every few weeks or so. I don't think we ever took malaria tablets.
We didn't have malaria in those days. I think there was a drought and then a flood and then suddenly there were mosquitoes.
Yeah, right. And so we were told to, and we did take malaria tablets. You took them as well, and when he got back, he was in Stanford and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. Our uncle, who's a doctor in South Africa, is like, he has malaria, and it's like, no, he doesn't have malaria. We checked. So, check again. Malaria kind of hides in the body, and
that's why they wouldn't believe it.
So this was after PayPal got started?
Oh, this is 2001. So it's sort of after the PayPal coup. So I was on the PayPal board, and I was providing sort of product advice and whatnot. But in December, late December 2000, went on a trip to South Africa, came back early January 2001, and had a severe case of malaria, almost died.
I sat next to his bed for about 5 days. He was yellow and just tubes going in and out of him. Just sat early morning till late at night, just waiting to see. And then they said to me, get some pajamas for him. And the closest store was some like Dress for Less or something. So I just got him some pajamas. And then the next thing, after 5 days, he woke up and he says, so there's bunnies on my pajamas. I knew he was bitter. I think they were bunnies or ducks or something, because that was what I could get. And then I knew he was better.
You were sleeping. I mean, like it affected your brain that harshly.
Yeah, no, it was bad. It was really bad.
So that changed your perspective? How did it like influence you after that?
I don't know. I don't think it changed me that much. Would you say?
I don't think it changed you.
No, I don't think it did.
Recovered and went back to
Yeah.
the world.
But how many times have you been on
I
vacation?
lost like 50 pounds, so it was great.
Yeah.
So no more vacations, though.
Well, yeah, it took me like almost 6 months to get back to normal.
Wow.
So, and then in 2001, I was thinking about what to do next, and I thought there's like sustainable energy, like basically electric cars, solar, space, and then a friend of mine asked me, so what are you gonna do next? I said, well, so I would love to do something in space, but I didn't think there's anything that a private individual could do in space. But at least I'm going to go on the NASA website and find out when people are going to Mars. And I go on the NASA website, and it's nowhere to be found. And so I was like, well, this is pretty weird. And then I discovered that it was actually a NASA policy not to talk about it.
Really?
Yeah, at the time.
Huh. Why was that, do you think?
What I was told is that when George Bush the First was when he was elected, he said he asked NASA to put together a plan to send people to Mars in 90 days. They came back with a plan, and it was $500 billion. And it says, well, this is like political suicide. So then after that, talk of manned missions to Mars were banned. That's what I was told. Yeah. So anyway, so it's like, well, maybe there's something that can be done here to get the public excited about going to Mars. And if I get the public excited, then they will vote NASA to have more funding. And so the original idea for SpaceX was just to have a philanthropic mission to Mars.
Yeah, actually, just started as a graphic of a pot plant. Just need to get the pot plant to Mars. It was like an inspiration.
Sure.
Just as a way to prove to the world that it could be done.
Yeah. So the mission was called Mars Oasis. It was seeds and dehydrated nutrient gel that would hydrate upon landing. You get this great picture of green plants on a red background. Be like the first sort of life as we know it on Mars, and you can also learn a lot about what does it take to keep plants alive and have a little miniature greenhouse on surface of Mars. So that's what I initially pursued as like a way to basically increase NASA's budget. It wasn't let's create a space company. It was how do we get NASA's budget increased so we can go send people to Mars. And I was trying to figure out how to get this thing launched, and the rockets, the European and US rockets were too expensive, and I couldn't afford them. So I went to Russia to try to buy some ICBMs in 2001, literally. They kept raising the price on me, and it was being quite difficult. And I said, I could afford to pay $9 million for an ICBM but not 20, because I figured we need to do 2 of these missions because odds are good that one would fail, and then it could have a negative impact potentially. So that was pretty weird being in Moscow trying to buy ICBMs in 2001.
That's amazing.
How do you negotiate to buy an ICBM?
Yeah, I call up the military and say, well, they got to they got to get rid of these things anyway because of the arms reduction treaties. So it's like, if you're going to throw it away, I'll take it off your hands. They have to. It was like SS-18 Dnepr. It was the biggest nuclear missile in the Russian fleet, and but anyway, they're gonna decommission these things. So why not just sell me them instead? And then every time I talk to them, the price would go up, and I'm like, this is not good. Because so even if once we do a deal, I'm probably going to get shafted afterwards too. And this is the pre-deal shafting. It's like, what's going to be afterwards? After I've given the money, then it's not going to be good. So, and then I started looking into it as like, why rockets cost so much, and so there's nothing fundamental about why they should cost so much. If you add up the materials and say, it's not like the raw materials cost that much. You really just need to figure out a smart way to get the materials in that shape. And then we need to make rockets reusable. So, like any form of transport, if it's not reusable, it's extremely expensive. If cars were single use, and you need a round trip, if you bought a car for $20,000, then your round trip will cost you $40,000.
That's true.
No, it's crazy. So the same thing's true for aircraft and boats and rockets and everything. So the rockets were expensive even as expendable things, but then they were also not reusable. So there's no way we're going to have a city on Mars unless we can have reusable, low-cost, reliable rockets. That's fundamentally the issue. So I came to the conclusion that even if this Mars Oasis mission was successful, it would still not result in it would not materially further the goal of being a multi-planet species, because the rocket technology was not good enough, and it was not getting better. In fact, it was arguably getting worse. So the real thing that needed to be solved here is reusable rocketry and lowering the cost of access to space. And that's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do that. So then I got SpaceX started in early 2002, basically. I was living in Palo Alto at the time, but most of the engineering expertise was in Southern California. So that's why I moved to LA.
Did you ever have any, like, even inkling of imagination that you could be doing, a dozen launches a year and being contracted with NASA? Is that even like it?
I thought that was I thought we had, 10% chance of success or something like that.
You ended up being chief engineer, right?
Yeah.
Because no one wanted to give up their secure jobs with ULA and something at the beginning.
Exactly. I actually tried to hire. Basically, there'd been a number of attempts at doing a sort of a private rocket company or commercial rocket company, and they're all failed effectively, and that's to the degree that it was like a joke in the aerospace industry. Like, how do you make a large fortune in the rocket? Start with the. Yeah, how do you make a small fortune in the rocket industry? Start with a large one. Pretty soon it's going to be small.
Business.
Yeah, they told me that joke so many times. I would just jump to the punchline, it was very hard to recruit people because I had not built any physical hardware before. And I kept being called internet guy. For the longest time, for ages. Finally, I made for the first 10 years they calling me internet guy, or basically an internet entrepreneur slash fool. He's trying to start a rocket company. What an idiot. That was generally how it went. So it was quite hard to recruit people, and especially if somebody's got like a secure job at Boeing or Lockheed or something like that. Then trying to recruit them to be chief engineer of a solid rocket company was hopeless. So basically, nobody who was good was willing to join, and there was no point in hiring somebody who wasn't good. So I ended up being chief engineer, which is so the first 3 launches failed, and probably if I'd been better, then we would have gotten to orbit sooner. So it took me a while to learn all these things. So
From books or?
Books and talking to people.
Did you go to Utah and talk to anybody, like at ATK Orbital?
Oh yeah, I visited ATK. Yeah. Orbital is Dallas, Virginia. Yeah. So yeah, I visited ATK, visited Orbital. And Orbital had a success with the solid rocket based Pegasus, but they'd also gotten like an 8 launch deal from DARPA. So okay, if you're starting off with basically an 8 launch deal from DARPA, that's a good situation. We did not have a launch deal from anyone. And Pegasus is there's some clever engineering with Pegasus, but fundamentally, I think launching rockets from planes is not sensible. Yeah. It sounds like it would be a good idea, but it's not. And then even Orbital went away from doing that with as soon as you get past certain size, they went to ground launch.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere that ATK, Morton Thiekol, they were doing snowcats, they were doing ski lifts, and they sold that to the man who made the DeLorean.
Really?
Yeah. I just read that in their Wikipedia. I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. Way to come around.
So, yeah. Right, so we got SpaceX going. And that was very difficult. We got the Falcon 1 rocket built. It was very simple. It's the simplest orbital rocket that's liquid fueled, so that it had the potential for reusability, for useful reusability. And then we had 3 failures. Finally got to orbit at the end of 2008. So
That was incredible. Going down to Kwajalein and watching.
yeah, you wrote it like a blog for a while.
Yeah, I actually still have it up there. It's still, and it's an old blogging platform that Google still keeps alive. It's called quajrockets.blogspot.com.
I think it's going to get a lot of traffic soon.
Yeah, totally. Send it. Check it out. It's all there. It's photos and photos of there was one photo of Elon picking up a satellite. We launched the rocket and the rocket exploded, which was very, very, very sad. Everyone's super sad. The people were like pouring their heart and soul into the rocket. And the satellite was, I think, a U.S. Navy or
Air Force Academy.
Air Force Academy, and it was thrown out of the rocket and fell through the roof of the hangar. This is like where you really think. A hangar, exactly. It's like a stand-up tent
and small tool shed.
Yeah,
Wasn't supposed to do that.
Like the size, maybe the size of this room. The rocket it had. This is the first launch failure, so it had there's a cracked aluminum B-nut on that cracked during liftoff and created so there was an engine fire. This wouldn't have been the end of the world, but there was one of the helium lines was steel mesh overwrapped with a Kevlar sleeve, and it melted the sleeve. And so we lost pressure pneumatic pressure, which caused the engine valves to close. So about 30 seconds after liftoff, the engine shut itself off due to the engine fire, and then it went ballistic and basically smashed in the rocks just a couple hundred feet offshore. And when it was quite a big explosion actually. In that explosion, the satellite, which was in a fairing, went through the fairing on a ballistic arc back onto the island, smashed through the tool shed roof and onto the floor in a pretty reasonable condition. Like it wasn't totally gnarled.
Reuse it?
So we gave them back their satellite. So like, we didn't lose your satellite. It may need some repair. But it was so improbable that the satellite would come back. We had a couple more failures after that. 2008 was a particularly difficult year because we had the third failure in 2008. The Tesla financing round collapsed.
Oh, it was such a nightmare.
And I got divorced, and it was just
I think 2008 was
Bad year.
really, really bad.
Yeah,
It was a bad year.
yeah. I'm thinking.